Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to WOR for the first time on the PC platform for F1 24. Of course, here with the social race at Belgium. It's safe to say that this game hasn't had the best launch, but we're going to test it out tonight with some brilliant drivers who I believe took part in PC Tier 2 and a couple from Tier 3, Sappy, and we'll see what they can crack up with this game.
Yeah, well, of course, it is a social race, so it is a little bit different to what we're used to. This is usually the part where we talk about the standings and the rest of the calendar
Yeah.
and what we can look to see throughout the rest of the season. But no, it's just something a little bit more fun, a little bit of preamble. We have also got that interim period because we are still waiting on the handling patch, given the reception of the game and how some drivers haven't been too happy with the handling model. Despite its changes, I think it's got really good potential. It just needs a little bit of tweaking, and we haven't quite got that tweak yet. So tonight is just a chance for some of our, as you say, tier 2, tier 3, some of the top brass as far as WR goes, to give the game a shot in a bit more, a bit less competitive setting around one of the newly scanned tracks, no less.
Yes, of course. Belgium having, a massive change going through towards this game. And I've got to say that visually it is 10 times better. There's a lot of bumps. Now, I don't know if that's a glitch or if they're meant to be there because I've got to say, either way, they're not as bad as some of the tracks, I'll put it that way. But we'll have a quick look through the grid anyway before we head our way in. So, in Red Bull, we have JSD and Nick Bonventa. Mercedes, we have Zach Miles and Thomas Laminen. In Ferrari, we have Joris Krozen and Leo Lund. In McLaren, I believe that is Tony Roche and Nelson Alves. And in the RB, we have Ray Imtiaz and Ricardo Benzoni. In the Williams, we have Daniel Gottschalk and Andres Lopez. In the Alpine, we have Joe Marquardt and Mark Schluter. In the Aston Martin, we have Jan Halliday and previous, I believe, console Tier 1 driver Liam Bowman alongside him. Then in the Kick Saber, we have Ryan Grob and Richard Sprogis. And finally, we have Leroy Brown and Valentino Lebella in the Haas car. So, Sappi, a very, very interesting grid. And I believe, as I said before, a few of those, or at least most of these here, did take part last season, didn't they, in Tier 2?
I know it's meant to be a social race, but this is still a pretty stacked grid as far as these go. Lots of names we recognise. Of course, if you've been watching from last season before, you will recognise also a lot of the names on this board, say the Tier 2s and Tier 3s alike, with a few Tier 1 appearances too. It's going to be a good race. I'm already looking forward to it. And it is going to be, as we are, I think, just waiting on the final confirm before we get into the quali session of this social. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be both a chance for us to see how drivers are handling the new track. Maybe, as you said, with some of the bumps, some of the lines are taking a little bit of an adjustment. What new times we can expect around the course, and as well as that, where drivers have specialized and sort of adapted to the new handling model, even if in its not fully mature state when it came out. It's still going to be interesting to see the dynamics and how that has changed driving styles between games.
Of course, and I think, in every game I think we've, in every F1 game I think we've had, there will always be games where some drivers do really well, then maybe in the next game they do really bad, and then, they can bounce around sometimes. So we'll also see who is going to be back on top here, who could be fighting possibly for a high Tier 2 seat or a high Tier 3 seat, and maybe in the future even try and vote for a Tier 1 seat. We'll head our way into the qualifying session now, and we'll get the first laps underway around. As we said before, this track has had many changes going into this game as well. There's been some visual changes and also some changes to the track surface. I believe it's been laser scanned as well. So that's what, as I said earlier, about all those different bumps on the track. But we shouldn't be too far away now from getting ourselves into the session. And of course, Sappi, the beloved, I believe, glitch of Haas and Ferrari being the same colour.
I did hear about that. Minor technical hiccup, but as I say, early days.
Oh,
it looks like though, albeit a little bit crunchy with the kind of the interim setup we've also had to run on the back end because my game, for those who don't know, I did try to boot the game and do a bit of pre-testing just before, a few hours before this session started, and I basically had to re-download the entire game. So. Unfortunately, that means that we're having to make a couple of compromises on the production side. I would have been streaming this, but luckily Nathan has stepped in and sort of done some work big time. But it does look like overcast And a bit of a brave move, as drivers are still opting to go out on slick.
Well, it's not overcast. I know that you got the very poor 480p screen on us, but it is raining, and the
That might
track
be it.
the track is also very wet. So yes, Stappy, when you start screaming, it's wet, it's wet. Why are you on dries? It's because, well, I don't know why they're on dries, but you know, the whole thing should have been that they should be on wet tyres. But as they're all and that's one sliding off the circuit, and another one, and a Ferrari also going straight on. So a very good start, and I've got to say, I'm sorry guys, but the rain does look rather bad at the moment. I'm not sure if that's a visual thing in my settings, but it does just look like a block when they go down a straight together. So a very interesting one indeed. But wet qualifying, Sappy. We know for a fact that wet TT doesn't exist anymore for some reason. So many drivers haven't practiced this weather. Now they're being thrown into it straight away. Brand new game, brand new handling model, controversial, and wet weather with slick tyres.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of volatility in both the setups and the drivers' approaches to some of these corners. We're already seeing it as they're going for their outlaps here in the session, because you have what I like to describe as a very nose-heavy driving model, where you can put a lot of heft and a lot of your sort of steering input very early on and let the nose settle and pull you through. Rather than a push from the rear, it's a pull from the front.
Yeah.
So you're combining that with, of course, this very different set of conditions, and of course being able to oversteer before letting the car naturally peel out. I think these next few laps are going to be very interesting. But regardless, we are seeing drivers actually head back into the pits, and I'm not sure whether anyone has actually taken the wet weather commitment, or if they just did an early feeler on the slick and decided immediately, you know what, actually, new plan, I'm going back in.
Yeah, every single driver has gone back into the pit lane. I'm just on board here with Jan Halliday, and it is not drivable at all here. You can see the Aston Martin drifting around. Yeah, these conditions are not drivable at all, especially for a qualifying lap, as Jan nearly ends it into the wall as he heads his way down towards Stavelo. So yes, well, let's see everyone head back in, put on a set of the intermediate tyres, and
I have
go
to say, though,
again.
what an angle there. Style points. Let us know in the chat.
Oh,
who's got
he's
the
gone
most
too
style
far. Oh, no,
points.
he's not.
Oh, beautiful.
Well, you can't tell, because with the grip being so high, that he actually can't spin the car.
That, I gotta say, impressive slip angle that he's managed to catch it back. Not really sure what to make of it at this stage, but he's certainly having fun with it. That much cannot be denied. Oh no, he's overcooked it! Or has he? No, he still manages to get it back the right way. He doesn't spin.
So, welcome guys to WRC. This time with green Formula 1 cars and a Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And now, the brake marker board has gone at the bus stop chicane. So, God help these drivers.
The World Online Drifting Championship. You join us with Jan Halliday, showing us how it's done.
Oh, brilliant. WODR now is the new name of the league, as we have someone out on an intermediate tyre. There we are.
There we go. That's Labella. We're going to actually see now the slicks are in the past, and these inters are going to get a chance to shine. I'm not sure if we've seen much differences in terms of the tyre characteristics. I think they have been kept mostly the same. All of the torque is in the suspension and the aero.
Yep, as Leroy Brown has decided, no, I want to start from the back. So he will be starting probably last in this session, of course, unless anyone below him also has an incident and ends up in a wall, or decides themselves they want to finish from the back. As Jan Halliday in the chat says, I'm not good at drifting. Well, you did a decent job at it, Jan. I've got to say, you know, you're back in your prime. It's just been nice if you could do that with actual lap times and not just showing your skill with drifting. As hopefully Jan goes back out on a set of the intermediates very shortly. But still on board here with Valentino Labella in the Haas car. Did a decent job, at least I remember back in season 16, 2 seasons back. So I'm interested to see what he can do tonight in this brand new car. But remember, we could see someone who might have been at the bottom of tier 2 be the quickest today because of the new handling model. Some people might be adjusted to it a little bit more. I know for a fact I am. I don't like it, but I'm quicker at it. I know that around Spain I was only 1.2 seconds off the world record. Last game it was near enough 2.5. So I've got, you know, I'm getting better.
But the dream is alive. The dream is very much alive.
Yeah, in T11 maybe.
Jan, not good at drifting, also pulls 60-degree slides and manages to pull it back.
And didn't
Yep,
spin it actually
sure.
once. He only did
Sure.
180s.
Sure, let's say you're not good at drifting then. All right, either way though, Labella, we're going to see our first full commit lap of the session here. Only, say, 12 minutes to go. And just about make that out between the Geiger counter and the display. But here we go. Labella now going to take us through our first full call run in the wet around the brand new Spa.
We'll see what he can do as he heads his way now up towards Eau Rouge and Radion up the massive hill. And of course, the grip being so high, he barely lifts as he heads his way up that big hill. Now, of course, along the Kemmel Straight with the DRS, down towards the Lacombe chicane. We'll see what he can do in this first set with lots of spray coming from the rear of that Haas, as it will be a 32. No, yeah, it will. It'll be a 32.9 for Valentino Labella in the first set. Doing a very good job so far as he heads his way through over the crest down towards turn number 10. We'll see what he can do into this braking zone. Brakes nice and late, coasts the car round. Very good job so far here from Valentino Labella. And I've got to say, you can see, on this game, at least from my view, you can see a dry line. Normally, you don't see that. So this has been maybe something that's been implemented into the F124 game, Sappy.
Yeah, well, I'd say the dry line was a thing, but maybe not as visually present, and that probably has been a point of feedback that has been adjusted for this year's iteration. The crazy thing to me is that we're not seeing lifts from understeer. We're seeing lifts from over-rotation that drivers are having to correct. The fundamental philosophy of the driving style for this game compared to last year's, it looks at least so different. How that's translating corner to corner, we can only ask the drivers. But as far as things stand, as we come through to the final sector, it looks like the limiting factor is bravery and the rear end, not the front anymore.
Of course, you can see the car just got a lot more grip than it used to as he heads his way through in towards the bus stop chicane and up towards the line. What will it be here for Valentino Labella? It will be a 152.106 to kick us off in this session as Nelson Alves goes to the top by half a second, or maybe even 0.6 of a second ahead of the Haas driver. What can Joris Krozen do? Of course, a champion in WOR in the past. Can he try and take the top spot away from the TES driver as he heads to the line? Yes, he can with a 51.285. Need to try and find someone now who's near the end of their lap. We'll go on board here with Ryan Grob, who's in the Kick Sauber, one of the new cars being added to this game. We'll see what he can do as he heads his way down towards the bus stop chicane, down to third gear, throws the car in as Mark Schluter there goes up to fourth with a 52.4, and Ryan Grob goes into third with a 51.5.
Yeah, so both Kick Saubers coming down now. Sprogus is going to immediately dethrone the Ferrari of Krozen with, I believe that's a .212. So just pipping it across the line there. A few more cars going around, a couple of invalidations. Got one of the Alpines going through here now. See all the different colour schemes. Something a little bit to get used to, especially in the Kick Sauber's case. But I'm sure green screen lovers are going to absolutely enjoy that new iteration of the car.
Oh, of course, as we can see, Zach Miles now head his way through and towards P1 and has a massive slide, and then, unfortunately, will be getting an invalidation on that lap. We'll see Race Imtiaz now head his way down towards the final couple of corners, but we'll go on board. Well, we was going to go on board with Liam Bowman, but unfortunately, he has also had an invalidation. So, we'll watch here what Race Imtiaz can do in the RB. Down to third gear as he heads his way into the bus stop chicane. Very nice so far, back on the pedal nice and early, up towards a line. What will it be for Race Imtiaz? It will be a top 5 at the moment in that RB with a 151.604. Let's see, is anyone else on a lap time? We've got Zach Miles now heading down towards the final corner, but of course he got that invalidation back in P1, so he will have to go either back into the pits or go again, and he, Sappy, will choose to go again, and I suppose that's a good thing about the wet weather. You can afford to put a bit more fuel in and go for 2 or 3 runs if you can't nail it on your first.
Yeah, and the inter tyre leans into that as well, because as those inter tyres wear down a little bit, you don't see that pace fall off like you do with the traditional slick. In fact, as the dry line starts to form, you really see the inter keeping consistent and in some cases better performance than if they were just completely fresh. They're much softer compound, much faster to get the heat into, but also much faster to lose. So wearing them down a bit, having them retain a bit more of the temperature as you start to heat the core rather than just the outer, it's one of those little nuances of the inter tyre that I've always appreciated.
Of course, yeah. The intermediate tire and the wet tire, we know for a fact, don't always have the biggest difference in the F1 game. You know, you can afford to use the inter tire in wet conditions on many different occasions. So, you know, but it is nice to see the inter tire more. I think it's you know, in these conditions, it's very easy to use. It's very grippy as well. So some drivers might actually prefer this over the dry tire. I've heard people say that. Yes, I know. Some people that have driven the wet have said they prefer it in the wet because it's more fun. You've not, you know, you don't just turn left and the car goes. You have to, you know, you have to fight it. You have to slide around and, you know, in some cases drift. So it does make the driving more fun for many in the wet, and also because of the challenge, which normally this game doesn't provide one yet. Until of course they bring out the new handling model. So you know, of course, some drivers might enjoy it. Of course, many of them won't have even bothered practicing it yet because it's not in TT. And many drivers get into the game, first thing they do, jump onto TT and see what they can do in their cars. So it's, you know, it's these first, I'd say maybe the first 2 months Sappy in this game will mean probably nothing in terms of people's pace because everyone's testing new things out. Some people as well are on different equipment. So the first couple of months you've got to kind of take with a bit of a pinch of salt, haven't you?
Yeah, it is pinch of salt. And again, we come back full circle. Social race, it's a chance for drivers to get their feet wet. There's minimal stakes. There's just a chance for, say, some of our best talent to come in, give it a go, give it some variation and not take it as seriously, give it a bit of a lighter touch. As we're on board with just some of the drivers here, you can see where they're just sort of in the micro movements of the steering wheel, how they're having to micro adjust each time they go around a corner. It's just understanding and learning the game again. It's a yearly thing. We saw it with 23, we saw it with 2022, we saw it with 2021. Drivers have to take the time to learn the game, and that's also part of why we have the social races. And even if we are going to throw some of that away when we do see the next patch, the fundamentals are still going to be there. It's still going to be fundamentally the same characteristics, and that's what the drivers have got a chance to learn here, alongside having a little bit of fun with their peers.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, another thing to talk about when you think of this is we've got many young drivers on the grid. Some of them aren't as experienced, and that's where we do sometimes see a differ in pace because drivers who might have been playing since maybe F1 2017 or something, they're used to having to try something new every year, where as the drivers who might have been here since F1 22, they're not as used as having to make those yearly changes as Leo Lund goes up to the top with a 150.752. So, you know, that's another thing we'll see. The more experienced drivers, we expect to be more up pace very quickly. The others, who might not be as experienced, might take a little bit more time to get themselves settled in with the new game, of course, and all the new handling, the new mechanics, everything that you need, of course, fundamentally for an F1 game. But so far, as we look back at the race on trackers, there's now a couple more people heading out onto circuit. It's still Leo Lund at the top with a 1 minute 50.752 with his teammate Joris Krozen in second. And then we've got Rihaj Brogis in the Kick Saber, right at the top three.
Yeah, and quite a good set of runs at those top three you've got there. So you got another one as Labella. We just jumped off Jan Hallidaisy, briefly invalidated coming out of the second sector. And we're going to see the Haas really, you can just see the nose get stuck in through the corner there. You've got cars that are, in some cases, a little bit more skittish, but you can also place a lot more weight and responsibility on that front grip. And I'm very curious, driver to driver, how that plays out. Some drivers from last game had a much more conservative driving style. They preferred to let the car sort of roll into its grip, whereas others preferred to wrangle the front end. They prefer to really just throw it in, and of course this game leans a lot more into the latter. So drivers used to that style will try their old setups and suddenly find it's a lot more skittish. It's a lot more nervous on the front end. And those other drivers are also going to have a bit of a different time. But here we go, Labella into the pits now, not committing to the run. Has got P10, so is still in okay positioning, considering half the field is yet to place. But we have got 3 minutes to go, and I doubt everyone else on the field is just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, many of them now there's about 4 of them going out onto circuit now to get their final 8 laps in. But if you talk about the handling and how to steer, just think of Alonso steering. That is it. You just throw the car in full lock and it just grips, pretty much. That's all you have to do. The car just grips. Physically, that shouldn't be possible. Alonso's steering has always been against physics. You shouldn't be able to throw the car in and it turns, but it does. And this is pretty much this game. If you look on Twitter, you've seen the laps, the hot laps. You can just throw the car in. You full lock at a high speed, and it just says, "Yep, you want to go that way? That's fine by me." It's like when you saw people using cheats in F123. The grip is that high, which is something I believe they probably might turn down a little bit when they bring out the new patches. I think it is definitely way too high at the moment. We know that F1 cars are grippy, but not quite that much. But we can see now a lot more people heading out onto circuit to begin their outlaps and their final runs of the session. Just on board here with the Mercedes of Thomas Laminen, one of the 11 cars to set the lap time at the bottom of that, currently with a 152.5. He heads to the top with a 149.6, Sappy. That tells us the track is starting to dry up quite a lot.
Yeah, starting to dry up, starting to get a lot faster extremely quickly. It's funny that you mentioned Alonso, because I think that was the first thing my mind snapped to when I started seeing footage of this game. Mind you, I don't see any teams suddenly scrambling out to manufacture a mass damper in the front wing, but what I am seeing is a lot of drivers sort of applying that philosophy and using that almost identically. Oh, we have got a yellow coming out. I'm not sure what's that all about. Have we lost a driver?
Yep, Andres Lopez. I'm just on board with Leo Lund. Out at turn 1 in the wall. And that's quite a long way to go before you bin it.
Indeed, that is. So, I'm not really sure what happened there. Might have been, I say, an external issue, but we do jump on with, I believe that's Mark Schluter there. But yeah, we are seeing drivers sort of emulate that philosophy. Get the front end turned in, use the slip angle to sort of scrub the tyres as well. But we see it going around there. We're seeing half and half across the grid. We're seeing half slick, half inter. And that crossover point, those who are committed to the inters kind of have no turning back now. And I think we're seeing just in the end of the session, we've seen the grid order potentially sow the seeds for a complete inversion, because look, that's got shot out. There's a few more cars out. There's a lot of traffic coming through. That is Schluter having to take evasive action, unfortunately invalidating on the last couple of corners. But just look at the absolute massive gaggle of cars around those last couple of corners, Nathan. Yeah,
mental, absolutely mental. We'll go and have a little look if we can. Look at this. They're all trying to find some sort of road as Ryan Grabber goes to the top there with a 149.658, but I don't think at all that lap time will stand at the top because the track is pretty much dry. They're on soft tyres. We need to try and find some actually who is on a set of the softest. Many of them didn't make it to the line.
Oh, no.
Labella
didn't make it to the line. Marquardt just pipped it with, I think, a couple of tenths to go. Yeah, we are seeing a few just not make it.
I'm trying to find someone who's the first on a set of the softs, and I think that might be the RB of Riccardo Benzoni. Yes, it is. So Riccardo Benzoni is the first one on the softs, but unfortunately we have no delta to look at, as that will be Tony Roche, I believe Exos.Speedy at the top with a 149.2 Sappy. But now, look at them coming through. They had to go to the line that quickly. They're all following each other through this middle sector.
Yep, and this is, of course, going to play a little bit of havoc, because we have seen in the latest iteration of these new-gen cars, the dirty air is coming back a little bit. It's still not as prevalent as it was pre-aero philosophy change, but the dirty air is a little bit more prevalent than it was last year. And that is, of course, something drivers need to keep in mind, combined with this twitchy aero model. Now, you're looking at Mark Schluter. We're seeing him come to the end of the second sector, right up to the edge of the gravel before powering through, foot to the floor, and absolutely leaving nothing to chance here. He is committed to the inters, and so many others are on the soft compound now. This is his Hail Mary. This is his last chance to get a good time on the boards. What are we going to see now? Coming up to the bus stop chicane, just at the 100-meter board, slams on the brakes. You can see much more corner through line speed, getting on the throttle as quick as he can up to the line is going to be the best. It's a 49 flat, it's a 0.053, but Benzoni's going to go and bring it into the 148.
Of course, many lap times coming through there. Benzoni to the top, the Mark Schluter in second. Zach Marzi in third as Jan Halliday goes up into third position. Now, what can Ryan Grubb do? He's not on a lap time, so I think that is it. Done and dusted. Very quick. Ending to qualifying. You couldn't, well, blink of an eye and it was done. So it's Riccardo Benzoni on pole ahead of Mark Schluter and Jan Halliday in the top three along with Zach Miles, and I still believe that Exo Speedy is Turner Roche. I'm 100% it is. So if anyone can correct me, that would be nice. But he was on the grid information. And he's French in the game as well, so I believe it is. But a very interesting top five indeed. A very interesting qualifying session, and well, because of the weather and the way that changed, we haven't really got an idea of pace because it was an idea of who was in the best position on track.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where we, of course, had a wet quali that started to go dry in the very end, and we saw, to an extent, a little bit of luck, but also just some drivers who are on the Inter just absolutely nail a run. And again, the Inter's still remaining viable for a very large chunk of the session. So this does, as you say, it doesn't paint the full picture. It's not fully indicative of pace. And with the immaturity of the model, we are going to see these sort of placings change massively, I think, especially once the race kicks off.
Yeah.
As things stand, quali looking spicy.
Of course, as we can now see the final classification of the qualifying session, it will be Riccardo Benzoni on pole ahead of Mark Schluter, ahead of Jan Herde, Zach Miles, Exo Speedy, Ryan Grubb, Tumas Laminen, Ray Simtiaz, Joel Marquardt and Leo Lund rounding out the top 10. Then we have Joris Krozen in P11, followed by Richard Sprogis, Daniel Gottschalk, Nelson Alves, Valentino Labella, Leroy Brown, JSD, Liam Bowman and Nick Bonventa and Andres Lopez at the back of the field in the Williams and the Red Bulls, and the Haas not having a very good start to quali. Of course, both of those teams down at the back of the grid, but I don't believe we have a restart. I think it's straight into the action here in WOR for the social race here at Belgium, Sappy, and I think it will be quite an interesting affair. Well, I would have said to you have the start, but from the image you sent to me of how your game looks, I don't think you'll have good. I don't think it'll be very good for you to read the names because I don't think you'll see them very well, will you?
No, I think, and say to quote, this looks like hieroglyphics. Looking at the name board, because I am looking at it in 480p, 15 frames per second. So we're making the best of what we got. Only the highest quality here, but let's say 30% to go with the race to race still to start. I don't think I'm making it, boys. But it is going to be what looks like a dry race.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be a big shuffle in terms of the first couple of laps because everyone's going to be trying to jump out, get some early runs. And the big priority here, I think, especially if you're looking at maybe P4 downwards in terms of start position, just stay out of trouble. You're going to see a lot of drivers try and push their way up and try and capitalize on the early game. Honestly, your best bet is just to keep your nose clean, run consistent, and then once you're a couple of laps in, that's when you can start to push on the pace and find your placement on the track.
Yeah, well, every driver says it, don't they? I'm going to keep my nose clean. I'm not going to get aggressive this race, but they all go against that, and they all end up sending stupid moves into a corner. It's racing drivers. Some of them are very young kids as well, who also just have that aggressive mentality. If I want to be in first, even if it disadvantages me at the end. So it will be a very, very interesting race, and hopefully we don't have to wait too long. And another thing to factor is tyre wear. It's different on this game. I don't know how much by, but I just know it's different. I don't know the specifics.
I know it's a lot more aggressive when you scrub the tyres, when you lock up.
Yeah.
It is much more aggressive. So drivers have to be a bit more careful in terms of how they use and leverage the compounds they're on, especially if they've only got one set of their ideal compound, because they're having to treat it a lot more gingerly, especially when getting it up to temperature, than they otherwise would. That's, again, something that they're having to learn over the course of the new game. There is another wild card coming into this race, however, and that is going to be the 5 cars who did not place, who did not put a time down, who didn't even, I think, get a valid lap at all, or didn't even go out in some cases. Yeah. So we're going to have to wait and see. Of course, we did have the 2 drivers who retired out from the session, and then we had 3 more who just didn't put a lap on the boards. But here we go. It is going to be race time.
As we have 5 laps here in Belgium for the WOR social race, it will be Riccardo Benzoni on pole and Mark Schluter in second as they head their way down to turn 1. A very good start from many indeed as they head their way down to La Source. And we can see Mercedes there locking up. That will be Zach Miles sending a massive dive bomb into turn 1 to make a move ahead of Jan Halliday now fighting side by side through up towards Eau Rouge and Radion. Who will be ahead? Will it be the Aston Martin or the Mercedes? It will be the Aston Martin just for now as they head their way up the hill down the Kemmel Straight for the first time in this race. And we'll see who could take the lead in towards Lake Commerce. You can see there Jan Halliday looking to make a move for the lead ahead of Riccardo Benzoni as they head their way down to the braking zone, and Zach Miles in third as they fight through. And I did see at the back there was a few cars being thrown onto the gravel at the exit at turn 1, Sappy.
Yeah, leveraging ERS a lot more. We're already seeing a few cars do a little bit of recharge because you have a lot more versatility when it comes to the model and the usage. So we're seeing drivers push it 110% in these early laps. Of course, they have the means to do so. They can put it as far as hot lap as if it was quali if they wanted to. But we're already seeing some penalties coming out. Leroy Brown, bottom of the field, plus a penalty for multiple warnings. That's going to be insult to injury for the Haas right there. Meanwhile, up at the top, Benzoni has dropped down to Jan Halliday. He has seen himself drop into P2, but he has got time on his side. 22 laps to go, and if he can save his battery, he can go for a much more aggressive move a couple of laps in, especially once the DRS has been enabled. Combine that with some of the new battery modes that you could deploy in this game, and he is going to have a much easier time taking the spot.
It will be quite interesting indeed. As we can see, though, those on the mediums not actually that much off the pace compared to those on the softs as they head their way down towards the bus stop chicane. Sends being made here between the McLaren and the Alpine as they head their way round out the final corner, and it will be Exo Speedy into fourth place ahead of Mark Schluter now as they head their way back down towards turn number 1. We can see Thomas Lebanon there as that's going to be a move from Race Imtiaz very late, as that's going to be someone locking up. That will be Exo Speedy locking up down at turn 1, and also someone losing a bit of their front wing, so a bit of contact happening down at La Source, and I can say it's been the source of a lot of contact so far, even though we're only 2 laps in this race.
Yeah, and drum roll, please. There we go. Lot of front wing end plates seemingly being lost. I think that was Imtiaz with one of the missing end plates, but it doesn't seem to be enough of a severe incident for him to warrant going into the pits, at least not to the point where we're seeing a massive degradation in performance. Looking around the rest of the field, we're on board with Zach Miles right now, and we're just spectating the fight between Benzoni and Jan Halliday, and just watch these two up ahead. Watch them try and gauge what the other is doing. We can see Jan Halliday a bit more prone to putting on the recharge light than the RB slightly ahead of him. Now, this is going to mean one or two things. Either he's trying to save up for a defensive strategy, or he really is running out of juice, which could be the signal that Benzoni needs to stage a counter-attack, potentially up into Blanchimont, but certainly the bus stop. I'd be wary if I was that Aston.
Of course, yeah. Jan Halliday has got pretty much full battery in that Aston Martin, but the thing is, if he's going to chuck it onto non at some occasions, he's got to be careful not to be caught off guard by Riccardo Benzoni behind, because there is a big difference in speed when you're on non compared to medium or maybe on overtake. So it won't be hard at all for Benzoni just to make him move ahead of Halliday if he wants to, put a bit more battery to use. As we can see them all heading down, as that's going to be Schluter to the inside, and also it's going to be Zach Miles to the inside of Riccardo Benzoni in towards the bus stop chicane. The RB and the Mercedes going side by side down towards turn number 1. Jan Halliday in the lead ahead of Benzoni, and Zach Miles in third as someone's had an incident further back. That was Andres Lopez now just returning back to the field as he heads his way back down towards turn number 1. The Ferraris having a bit of a battle there. Joris Krozen and Leo Lund with that will be Exo Speedy behind. I think it's Senna Roche, but I'm not 100% sure, so that's why I'm going to stick to Exo Speedy for now. As we can see, a fight for the lead, 3 wide down towards the Laycom chicane. Mark Schluter as well looking to get involved. Will look from the behind as they head in towards Laycom. It will be Halliday just a bit ahead of Zach Miles, and Benzoni still going to get his foot in there as they head their way through the right-hander, and it will be Benzoni back into second place. Zach Miles tapping his foot in so hard, but he just can't find a move through.
Yep, needs to be patient. Like Schluter is just behind him. He's biding his time, knows he's on a different tyre compound, looking at what's going on around him and not being overzealous. I think Miles is falling prey to that sort of early jump that so many drivers fall themselves into. It's just that they need to get past. As soon as possible, they need to get past. And it's not always the case, because you're just leaving yourself open, especially if you expend all resources into a single move. You're just leaving yourself open to be retaken. Like we saw with Benzoni, he was side by side with Zach Miles, but because he had a little bit more resource, he wasn't fighting too defensively. He could just take it back immediately. Imtiaz and Roche seemingly looks like Roche having a little bit of a moment there. Can't really tell all too much what's going on, but one thing we do know for sure is that Miles is going to be going for it once again. That's Schluter peeking around to the left, then to the right. That's going to be Benzoni jumping the curbs on the bus stop side by side with the Mercedes just up ahead. It's a drag race between the two into the first corner. Let's see who comes out on top. Of course, the RB has the apex, has the inside line. That's going to be a big send coming in from the Alpine as well. Schluter has decided it's now or never, and contact aside has got through into third place. More chaos down the back, as well as Roche has demoted himself all the way down into P16.
Yeah, big contact there between Crozen and Richet as they also make another pass as they head through turn 1. And there we're going to move from Ryan Grob on the grass, trying to get
That's
past
very brave.
Zach Miles as we can see Ricardo Benzoni take the lead of the race ahead of Ryan Grob. Then Jan Hode goes very deep in towards the Lake Comstragain. He goes off the circuit and gets a penalty to add to his pain in the first sector here at Belgium. So now he will drop all the way down the field at the end of the race if the gaps stay like this, as we can see. Laminen fighting with Lund as well for P6 and P7 as that will be Lund to the inside in towards No Name corner. It'll be Laminen onto the gravel for a second, but does recover the car for now. A bit of tyre hooking as they head their way to Buon. That nearly ended in tears for both of those two.
Yeah, but the snappier front end means they were able to catch it. I think if you had an incident like that in the previous game, you would have seen drivers go sidewise and a lot more upset being generated. Luckily, both of them coming out okay, if a little bit more annoyed than when we started.
Yeah, indeed. It's been quite choppy so far. As that was another incident here at Fort Tony Richet. It looks like it was, unless it was for the Red Bull of Nick Bonventre. I'm not quite sure, but someone had an incident there down in the final couple of parts of Sector 2. As we can see there, Richard Sprogges get past JSD and Ryan Grob gaining in yet again onto the rear of Mark Schluter for P3. As they head their way through into the final corner, back down towards La Source at turn number 1. And still, it's Benzoni who leads ahead of Jan Hode and Mark Schluter in third. And Zach Miles now dropping down to P5 in this race, under pressure here from Thomas Laminen. So that makes you think, to an extent, is the soft tyres now, are they getting a little bit worse? Are they getting a bit too much worn here at this current point? And giving those medium tyres an advantage as they head their way up the hill. And of course, Leo Lund in 7th place as well, looking to try and get back past the Mercedes. He's tried it earlier on, but couldn't do so. Now he's burning his battery as they head down towards Laycombe. As we can see, Jan Hode take the lead once again, and this time he does break in time for the Laycombe chicane.
Yeah, well, Jan Hode's got a different challenge on his hands, however, because regardless of what he does against Benzoni, he's still got that penalty to contest with, and it's not going to get lifted. I can tell you that now. By the nature of the incident he had, that penalty stays. So whatever he does here, he's got to do that, plus negating the time loss from the penalty. So We'll see where this goes. We'll see how this plays out. As things currently stand, it's looking like Jan Hode's in a good spot, but he's still going to get demoted to what looks like P6, maybe P7 by the time all is said and done and by the grid splaying out.
Of course, yeah, it might not be the easiest race at all here for Jan Hode as they head on towards that second stint. But of course, something to look at is that there's mainly medium tyres, but a couple of softs on the board as well. So we'll see who has the favourite strategy once we come to those pit stops in around maybe 5 or 6 laps time, as we can still see the field follow their way through down towards the bus stop chicane. We can see here Mark Schluter once again on the rear of Ricardo Benzoni. Goes for a bit of a fake dummy send in towards the bus stop chicane. And I've got to say, that's Ryan Grob making a send through in towards the bus stop chicane. I don't think anyone saw that coming apart from Ryan Grob himself. And there that brings Zach Miles back up into the fight for P4 as they head down to turn 1. And now we've got them batting through each other like it's a ghost race as Ryan Grob goes back up into P4 ahead of Zach Miles. And we'll see who gets ahead as they head their way up the hill.
Yeah, I think a dive is a kind way to put it, because it did look like he was getting very close to the side. And of course, Grob is now using to his advantage, same as anyone given a tool would do. Using it to full advantage is going to be that ghosting mechanic. And he has now got not only the ideal first sector, and very deep coming there from Leo Lund. He does manage to keep it together, but still a bit of a nail-biter moment there for the Ferrari runner. He is going to dive around the outside, try and hang on the exit speed, see if he can get the apex in through this corner, through No Name. And unfortunately not quite getting it, but we are seeing, as with anyone, you are given tools at your disposal. Yeah. Ryan Grob now in P4 and with a healthy margin, but say short of that move at the start, it's tough to see foul play.
Of course, and still an amazing battle here between the two Mercedes and the Ferrari, as Nick Bonventre gets a 3-second penalty to add to his final race time. As we can see, of course, Zach Miles now really start to drop off from the rear of Ryan Grob. That gap now 0.6 of a second as they head their way down towards the Blanchimont corner. As we can see, Thomas Laminen for a second look for a move, but backs off as they head through in towards turn number 19. We can see as well Leoland and Nelson Alves as well looking to try and get in and try and put their foot into this battle for P5 in this race as they all follow their way through Up the bit of a hill, back down towards the source, of course, with a bit of a shot of DRS as you head your way down towards turn 1 around this circuit. Doesn't really do much, the DRS, and it more just keeps you with the car rather than gives you an opportunity to make an overtake ahead of the car. But Mark Schluter here looking very strong on the mediums as Nick Bonvet has retired in the pit lane, so he won't continue in this race. Obviously a very poor race here for the Red Bull at the moment, and well, he won't continue any longer, so he doesn't get to test out much more the new game, but I don't think many people do the Sappy?
No, in this case. Well, if everyone's got DRS, no one does. And that's the moral of the story here. We're seeing the pack so tightly condensed together as you see a little bit of swapping, chopping, changing. Reyes Imtiaz now up into P8, having to immediately dive to the inside and try and cover off. Goes for the P7 against Leo Lund here, and they're going to remain side by side all through the second sector. But big contact between the two. Catch it. But Imtiaz down to 13th, potentially 14th as a result. Meanwhile, a bit further up, Marquardt is capitalizing on the situation, but he's got a penalty to his name after foraying too much outside of the track limits through Pon. And there's going to be another car also picking that up slightly further down. But looking around this mid-pack, it looks like everyone is still fighting tooth and nail. Got the Kick Sauber, Sprogis, for instance, trying to close the gap to Lund. And like with Zach Miles, we're not seeing so much of a drop-off as we're seeing that lovely thing called momentum. Once you start to drop places, it's hard to stop. And it is quite the effort to get yourself back on track, mental game and pace-wise. Here we are, Sprogis going to continue that trend now as Leo Lund goes down yet one more. Or does he? Through the bus stop.
They head through in towards a bus-stop chicane now, and it will be the Kick Saber versus the Ferrari. The Ferrari shoots off the circuit as they head their way back down towards turn 1 and still keeps the position ahead of Richard Sprogis now. As you can see, Joris Krozen as well pop himself up into P8 in this race. Richard sends it up the inside at turn number 1, looking to try and get a move ahead here of Leo Lund. These two, a bit of a personal battle it seems at the moment in this race as they head through turn 2, up the hill. A Tour Rouge and Radion, a bit of tap to the left, a bit of tap to the right. This won't end badly, and well as they head their way up towards the top of the hill, and a penalty, and that's going to be an interesting one indeed as they head up the hill.
Did they come across?
Well,
we'll have to tell.
We'll leave that one as it is, won't we?
Yeah, well, Sprogis either way is going to suffer for it as he's going to be dropping down not one with his initial challenge, but 2 more places and a penalty to add insult to injury. So a run to forget for the Kick Sauber there. Gottschalk also going to be hit with the penalties, and that is going to make it leave 7 competitors on the board now with a time penalty, and that is going to affect final standings quite substantially, especially for the drivers in 1st, 6th and 10th.
But also, you look at Jan Halliday, he's got that lead, hasn't he? And then there's a massive gap back to Joel Marquardt. If that gap stays where it is, that helps Jan Halliday. That keeps him at least a net P5. So, you know, it's not going to be all lost here for Jan, as long as that gap behind keeps as big as it is because of all those guys sending moves, you know, dive bombing, taking each other out along straights. As long as that keeps happening, that's good for Jan Halliday as Ryan Grob takes the lead ahead of the Aston Martin, and Mark Schluter now looking to try and make a move for second as they head their way through side by side. Can the Alpine get ahead? It's going to be side by side into the braking zone, and where will he go? He can't really make a move because Ryan Grob says they head into the braking zone, and still it will be Grob who leads ahead of Jan Halliday, and now Zach Miles looking to make a move ahead of Mark Schluter down towards turn number 1. And that's a few cars heading into the pit lane. That will be Imtiaz, Bowman and JSD all making a move as that will be Zach Miles making a massive send into turn 1. And unfortunately for him, not working out.
Massive send, massive slide, massive recovery there for Miles. And it is going to return to status quo, but certainly a little bit of a bruise to the talent, as one might say. But looking around, it looks like everyone has, for the most part, swapped onto the medium tyre, or is on the medium tyre, committed, at least for this stage of the race. You've only got a couple of soft runners left. That's going to be Miles and Jan Halliday, one of which is going to be leveraging that while they still got it. You see a little bit of slip angle coming from the Aston Martin, but he has got it up into P1. Now, the thing to note, and while I can't see quite on my screen, is it 3 or 5 seconds that Jan Halliday has? Because remember, corner cutting and multiple warnings penalties are slightly different. But yeah, okay, 3 seconds, so not much of a deficit. But of course, if he had 5 seconds, we would have been talking a very different story.
We would, indeed. It would be a very, very big penalty. And I'd definitely say one that's not deserved for Halliday. As you could see there, Thomas Laminen looking to go left, looking to go right, trying to make a move ahead here of Zach Miles, but just can't find the way through. And I've got to say, there's a bit of front wing damage on that Mercedes of Thomas Laminen. You can see his right wing game plate is gone, and he's sticking with them quite well. So the damage there, not really giving him much of a difference, which is, I'd say, is a surprise. Normally, you'd be quite far off the pace if you had a missing end plate. As we can see, yet again, more battling down towards the final couple of corners. It's Halliday who still keeps the lead, and Grob and Schluter still looking to try and fight for first place as they head their way through. Of course, DRS gets enabled down this little straight in towards turn 1 as Nelson Alves has had an incident along the back straight in towards a bus stop chicane. As we can see there, I think Alves heading in towards a pit lane, so he's done on his medium tyre. We'll see what he chooses to pit onto for the remainder of this race. And now we could see a brilliant battle up the hill, up towards the Lacombe chicane, because Schluter and Ryan Grob are right behind the back of Jan Halliday, I think even closer than before, Sappy.
Yeah, we're seeing a couple of drivers go on a conservative strategy, but there we go. Grob is going to be going past. Schluter's going to be going past. Could it be 3? As Miles is also going to go past. That is first to fourth in a single sector.
Damage.
But big drama. And Jan Halliday once again going off the course. And now dropping not just from 4th, but all the way down to 11th. As that, I believe, was quite a significant impact there. Damage seems to be just an end play. I don't think we've seen actual major segments of the front wing come off so far for anyone, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but maybe the drivers are either being more careful or the front wings are just a little bit more resilient in this game.
Well, I think if they learnt from how last game went, maybe they need to be a bit more resilient for the fact of keeping up with the drivers, because that's just, if you use league racing, there's a lot of damage in a lot of races, especially on the F1 23 game. Obviously, coming on to this game, there's not that much damage. Well, the damage has been there, but it's not really affecting the cars that much because Thomas Laminen is back with Zach Miles, even though he's got damages. So he goes to move on to the grass as they head into Blanchemont corner now, looking to make a move up into 3rd place ahead of Zach Miles, and gets the move completed now ahead of his partner Mercedes as they head to the braking zone.
Heroic move there.
Indeed, it was quite a scary one indeed. I think he went off track for a little bit of that segment, but he does, of course, keep that position in 3rd ahead of Zach Miles and Joel Marquardt as well. Now looking to fight for P4 as he makes a move to the to the outside of Zach Miles, and just can't quite get that done. And Jan Halliday gets a 10-second penalty. Yes, on this game, the penalties for speeding are 10 seconds.
Brutal. And of course, I think that's just going to reinforce anyone speeding in the pit lane is going to be very quickly retiring if the previous seasons are anything to go by. Either way, both the Ferraris here very tightly clumped together. We're seeing a game of 2s as you've got the Hasses just behind. You've got 3 and 4 with the 2 Mercedes. Ryan Grob is in the Kick Sauber and trying to keep it on the back of Schluter. Now, Schluter was playing a bit of the long game alongside Grob, because the thing that I noticed in watching that Kick Sauber is he was opening and then closing the DRS pretty quickly. He was closing it quite prematurely. Deliberately staying behind, and again, race strategy 101, you don't want to be in first. Counterintuitive as it may seem, you're just leaving yourself open to attack from DRS, from ERS overtakes, and a lot of the time the best position to be is second, in fact.
Definitely, or even in some cases, like on this circuit, 3rd, as we've seen most of the lead happen from 3rd position, because the DRS is just so OP. It's more OP than it was on last game. You open it up, you use a bit of battery, and you can fly past the car like it's an F1 versus an F2. So that's why being in 2nd and 3rd is even more of a better position than in last game. Being 1st on the last lap is, it's not good at all. You might as well be last at that point. It is not ideal whatsoever. As we can see there, Joris Krozen look to close in here on the rear of Joel Marquardt in the Alpine for P5. Of course, a penalty for Joel Marquardt, so he will drop down a few positions anyway. So net position that Joris will have is, of course, 1 higher than he's got at the moment as they head into turn 1. I've got to say there's been a lot of locking up heading in towards the source, a lot of locking up heading in towards Lake Como as well, so drivers looking not to be too happy with the brakes here around this circuit.
Yeah, well, some of that could be visual. We have seen it in the past where drivers are generating tyre smoke without actually locking the tyres, at least from a spectator point of view. Grob is going to be going for it. He's going to go around into the right side, quickly diving back onto the racing line for a very clean overtake for the lead of the race. But we are seeing some cars also, like we were seeing in qualifying, just where they're pushing the limits of the model. We are seeing some lockups and some, we'll call it optimistic moves. We did see earlier in the race too. But I think right there, I think that's just a case of reaching the limit on your front right tyre and not necessarily actually locking up. I think part of it is visual.
Of course, and I've got to say as well, so far in this game, the like you can easily run alongside, run behind drivers a lot better than last game. You know, it doesn't look like the dirty air is as too effective. You know, we've seen drivers run within a tenth of each other for a whole lap. So that's another interesting thing about this game is drivers can run a lot closer to each other, or at least for now, they can run a lot closer to each other. As we can see, Joris Krozen there looking to make a move ahead of Zach Miles and Leo Lund going to the outside as they have a bit of contact as they head their way through. So Leo Lund and Joris Krozen through on the Mercedes, who of course is on the soft tyres still. Yet to pit is Zach Miles on that set of 11 lap old softs as Valentino Labella makes an appearance to get himself ahead of the Mercedes, who I believe should be pitting this lap. And no, he continues on, does Zach Miles, so taking this in very, very long in this race. But I think he knows that he's in the DRS, so maybe it doesn't really hurt for him to stay out for a little bit longer.
I don't know. I think he might have overcooked it. I think that even with the situation regarding the DRS, I think taking out the softs this long and not getting onto something like the medium is kind of a waste of pace. And you are going to lose time taking the softs out this long. You can still make the most of it, but as we're seeing there, we're seeing Labella pretty effortlessly get by. And while that is a DRS argument as much as it is a raw speed one, it's not exactly making the gains that he once was, and this is a situation where I think he would have been better switching out onto some prime mediums.
Definitely. You know, you can see here, in effect here for Riccardo Benzoni, of course, pitting quite early on lap 8, he made his pit stop, and he's now on his 5-lap old hards, of course, will go to the end, and he's only 4 seconds off the leading train. So he's done a very good job to kind of get himself onto a new set of tyres, avoid any contact, and just push, and now get himself very close to those who still have to pit. So he theoretically should win, because the gap is going to be like, what, 16 seconds by the time the others have pitted? It's going to be quite a large gap that they have to bring back, and with all the battling, I can't see them actually getting back towards Riccardo Benzoni. So this has been well, I remember back in, I think it was Piesha last week at Qatar, and Leo Lund won by 4 seconds because of all the battling behind. So, as we have a message saying it's raining, and is it raining? I can't quite tell, but Carlson does tell us in the chat that it's raining. And it is. Well, it is raining. It's raining.
I'll leave that to you, because remember, my screen still looks like it's being exposed to a Geiger counter. But we are seeing drivers immediately jumping in at the spot, and immediately feeling the effects, as that is going to be Ryan Grob taking a massive slide through the first corner. And well, so the slicks are already struggling a little bit. Benzoni, we were just saying how Benzoni could have pulled off a strategic masterclass, but this looks like to be a total inversion on those race plans, as we're already seeing 4 cars jump onto the Inter. And maybe we underestimated what Miles was doing here in that Mercedes. This could have been a masterclass in disguise. Wolf in sheep's clothing. But big slides, big skittishness coming out from a lot of the front runners who are remaining committed to the slicks, who are having to take it round for at least one more lap. We're suddenly going to see a lot more gingerly inputs. As we can see, still, the Ferraris are going at it. But look at how much the rears are snapping on some of these cars.
Yeah, there's no grip at all. You can see them all just trying to fight the cars through as they head into P1. Now, this could be quite a scary corner as they head their way through a lot slower than normal, as Leo Lund gets a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings. And they all fly through, and there the gap is, well, Zach Miles is right behind the back of Nelson Alves already. So he will be in the lead, I think, by quite a decent margin, actually, is the way it's going, because the track is getting wetter. The drivers are struggling even more as this lap continues on. As we can see, Mark Schluter still lead the way ahead of Ryan Grob in second and Leo Lund in third, with quite a large gap to that top two. So they've got a bit of a, a bit safe for now, and I presume they should all pit now. But the issue is, Ferrari, one of them should have pitted last lap, for sure, because now they are really screwed. They've either got to do a double stack, as Joris is going to send it on his teammate, because one of them wants to pit. They don't want the other one to pit, as they both go off the road down at the bus stop chicane.
They really said, no, my pit lane, my pit lane. That is, you can see the argument in real time. But look, you've got double stacking. You've got really no choice between it. Crazily enough, I think Labella and Marquardt, along with Benzoni, remain committed to another lap on the slick compound tyre, along with Imtiaz and one of the Aston Martins. 10 seconds. Yep, brutal reminder, 10 seconds. That's not going to be something you want to trifle with anymore. But look, so many drivers still remaining on the slick compound. Either bravery or a missed opportunity. We'll have to wait and see. The RBs, though, both of them stayed out on slick, and I think at least one of them, as you were saying with the Ferraris, one of them should have pitted.
Of course, so a very weird scenario of why some of them are staying out on their tyres. Of course, Riccardo Benzoni still staying out on his hards. I thought he would have maybe been into the pit lane. I don't expect it to go dry again. I think now it's wet, it will stay wet. So a very interesting scenario indeed, as technically net lead is Mark Schluter ahead of Ryan Grob and Zach Miles. Of course, those two had a bit of a battle heading up towards Eau Rouge and Radeon. Zach Miles got the jump, but then of course dropped back on the straight, and that allowed Ryan Grob to get his way through up into 7th place. Of course, for the back, we've got Leroy Brown as well. He pinned 9th. He was a little bit further down earlier on in the race, but he's now fighting for some decent points, or, well, what would have been decent points if he was here for a main season race. And then we've got Jos Krozen, Michal Sprogis, Tony Richet, who was also near the back earlier on as well. After contact, he's just ahead of Leo Lund. And then we've got Thomas Laminen in 14th, as that will be Mark Schluter making a move ahead of Liam Bowman, who's on the mediums. So, Liam, going to be one of the first here to be swamped by the intermediate runners.
Yeah, you can see him absolutely getting swallowed up there. He's just got no grip and no real chance. There's one spot has quickly become 4, now 5 as Krozen gets by. Oof. And Marquardt, with a very sideways moment, keeps going. Yeah, he's going to keep going. And maybe, I'm not sure what it's looking like because I don't have access to my magic telemetry tools, but one thing it could be looking like is drivers are maybe hoping that this is a brief spell of rain and the dry line is going to form, that the dry is going to quickly come back, and maybe they have a bit of a resurgence due to the time that they didn't lose going for the pits.
Well, if that was the case, that would make this race ever so interesting, but I can't see it going dry now. As you can see, Nelson Alves retiring in the pits, and we've got people fighting up the hill at Eau Rouge and Radeon. We've got a Haas going off the circuit, trying to make a move ahead of a Mercedes, a Ferrari on the outside onto the grass as they head their way down in towards Lacon. We've got 4 cars here battling for P. I believe this is P3 in the race as they head their way down to the braking zone. Sorry, it will be P5. It will be Joris ahead of Zach Miles, ahead of Leroy Brown, and Race Imtiaz is the one on the medium tyres. He will be swamped down and will fall even further down the field. A big shame indeed for Race Imtiaz. As we can see there, Mark Schluter now look to try and close in on the back of Joel Marquardt, and we'll see what happens between these two. Hopefully it should be quite an easy move here from Mark, but we'll see how difficult that Joel Marquardt makes it.
Yep, Marquardt is going to be our litmus test, and I think we've just seen that litmus test immediately be proven, as Marquardt has dropped 2 spots. Going to be Grob also going down. Benzoni struggling for grip hard. Ooh. And locking tyres with Schluter. That could make it very dicey on Grob, although Grob has got past both of them, so he's taken that opportunity for a double overtake. And now Benzoni is just sort of in the weeds, trying to keep a handle on the car. Not doing too hot there. Along with Marquardt and Imtiaz, they both are dropping, and dropping massively. Leroy Brown going to make it yet another overtake, and I think we're seeing our top 3 really come to fruition very fast.
Of course, and Mark Schluter definitely not happy with what happened last lap, of course, with getting a bit caught up wheel to wheel with Riccardo Benzoni heading through at the end of the La Fagna chicane. He's now into 2nd and might struggle to get back past Ryan Grob, who of course is in the lead ahead of Joris Krozen in 3rd. And Zach Miles in 4th, of course. No penalty for Zach Miles, so he will jump up ahead of Joris Krozen as long as he sticks within 3 seconds of the Ferrari. Further back, of course, we've got Tony Richet, who's also in a good spot in terms of penalties. He could jump all the way up towards P5 if the if the pace doesn't drop for him, as we can see there. Ooh, he had a bit of a snap going up the hill, I think. It looks like he went wide very wide for a moment, because you can see there people trying to make moves. And what's going on there? We've got people. It looks like they're just like wiggling around along the straight.
Yeah, we're seeing, well, if you've ever had sort of a loose steering column, you get what's called the death wobble, where, say, your steering jerks left and right, and it looks like your car is wobbling side to side. I don't think this game simulates that, and you'd hope not, given the high-spec machinery that this is, but it almost looks like drivers are having that in some cases down the straight. They're just jittering left and right constantly, and in some cases sweeping across the track, whether that's by intention or by, say, a little bit of control troubles. We'll have to, I guess, find out in due time. But one thing's for sure right now is that nobody is finding the wet an easy ride. Everyone is having some sort of slide or some sort of control issue where they're either losing the rear or just struggling to keep the pace up in some cases.
Well, I presume that with the limit of setups, many of them might be on a TT setup. Well, with there being no wet TT, they're all on a dry TT setup. So this is why it might be a bit of a struggle for some, of course, not being adjusted to these conditions with the setup that they're running. As we could see there for a moment there, Joris Krozen went for a move on Mark Schluter to try and take second place away from the Alpine as they head their way back down towards turn 1. And now you can see Joris getting in very quickly, but backs off. He doesn't want to make the move as they head down to turn 1. He goes a little bit deep himself as he heads his way into the braking zone, back on the power, heading out of La Source, back down towards the hill, Eau Rouge and Radion, of course, then a long run down towards the Lecombe chicane. As we can see Leroy Brown now using a bit of battery, a bit of a top speed advantage here over Zach Miles, looking to try and get himself up into the top 4 in that Haas.
Well, they're running out of time. Look at the lap count. They know that if they want to get a move done, it's going to have to be done pretty sharpish. Miles being dropped down to P5 by Leroy Brown, although Leroy has got quite the multitude of penalties to his name that he's going to have to contest with. So it is going to be a Pyrrhic victory in a way for the Haas here, as we see Benzoni getting more penalties as well. That one's going to be specifically for corner cutting rather than multiple, so the game deemed it a significant breach to be a penalty in its own right, along with Orais, Imtiaz, and majority of the field by this point getting some kind of extension-related penalty. Either way, as more of them continue to roll forward, it looks like we're going to see a very different final result, given the amount of time that has been added on by stewards.
Of course, the penalties here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got, 12 penalties here out of a possible 17. Only 5 drivers not having a penalty here in this race, being Liam Bowman, Andres Lopez, Zach Miles, Mark Schluter, and Ryan Grubb. Everyone else has got themselves a nice penalty to add to their lap time at the end of this race. And now we can see Joris, though, looking for a move in towards the bus stop chicane, looking to make P2 in his hands as they head down towards the brakes. And you can see there Mark actually nearly hitting the back of Ryan Grubb as well, looking to try and defend from that Ferrari.
Yep, looking for space is that Ferrari, and space it has found alongside Mark Schluter, but is it going to have the sticking power to get that move done? Krozen is going to go to the right now as he gets a brilliant switchback and a little bit more speed out the first corner. Can he get the move committed through Eau Rouge and Radion? Looks like he is. He's got significantly ahead. Brilliant move there from the Ferrari, and that honestly is textbook. You switch it back, you get the differential and the speed coming out of the corner, and we saw him bait him, move in, move out, corner to corner. Brilliant stuff.
Of course, then we had a DNF on the straight from Timus Laminen. I think he just clicked retire from session there, as his car does still continue on. As we can see, moves being made there by Leo Lund ahead of Richard Sprogis. These two have had battles in the past in this race, so we'll see what happens between these two. Those we can see moves being made at the front as Ryan Grubb defends here from Joris Krozen for the lead of the race as they head their way around to No Name corner now at turn number 9. Mark Schluter as well looking to gain back in here and get himself involved in this battle, but it could be a brilliant affair between the top 3 as we've only got 3 laps to go on the track. It looks like the rain stopped, but the track is still very, very wet.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be worth it for anyone to respond to the rain stopping in terms of coming down, because the track is still slick. The dry line is going to naturally form within a couple of laps or so, but it's just not enough time to really leverage it. You might see a couple of people do a little bit better, but beyond that, you're not going to have much luck. So the priority for the likes of Grubb, Schluter, for instance, they just need to bring it home. And same goes with a lot of the mid-pack. Everyone has penalties, so they technically are on the same playing field. They just need to bring it home. Don't be overzealous. Don't put yourself in a compromising situation. You're too close to the end now. You see Krozen going for the P1 and big extend out the side of the track. That's Labella going out wide, and Blanchimont recovering into the bus stop. But yeah, looking at the top, Krozen is going to be ahead, but he's going to drop it back down on the penalty. So like Grubb, Schluter, and to an extent Miles, they just need to get to the end.
Yeah, pretty much. Just keep it consistent and get the way to the end of the race. As we can see there, Richard Sprog is ahead of Leo Lund for a split second, but these two still having a battle side by side up the hill in towards Eau Rouge and Radion. And for now, Leo Lund does keep himself ahead in the Ferrari, looking to fight as well with the Mercedes of Zach Miles, of course. These three a very aggressive pairing indeed. I wouldn't like to be behind these three, that is for sure. As we can see, Mark Schluter take second ahead of Ryan Grobner to put himself into the net lead position of the race. So we can still see these moves happening. As we can see Zach Miles defend him. We can see Leo Lund try to go around the outside. They lock wheels as they head their way through a penalty for the Ferraris. They head side by side down the hill now. And we could see big contact, and that's Miles into the wall. So now it'll be Leroy Brown up into... Oh, he's already up into fourth. Ignore that. Leo Lund up into fifth, sorry. Ahead of Rio Sprogis and Valentino Labella up into seventh position.
Yeah, Miles out of the running completely. We're down to 13 surviving drivers now, as we've seen a lot of retirements. And unfortunately, sometimes this is just the way with social races, of course, like limited stakes and things don't go your way. These are highly competitive drivers. The minute they don't see things going their way, they're going to yield, they're going to fail. Unfortunately, that is just the order of things it seems to be in the modern era. But looking at the 13 drivers remaining and seeing how hard they are fighting, it goes to show that in terms of some driving styles and spirits, things in some cases never change. Like you did say, we had say a couple of aggressive drivers going at it, and you see them even going onto the grass and really just getting each other out to the limit, even being boxed in. The likes of Sprogis wasn't going to take that lying down.
Of course, as they all head their way through now in towards the final corner to begin lap 21 of 22 in this Belgian Grand Prix. And still, Joris Krozen leads, of course, to the penalty, which will, of course, revoke that victory and drop him down to P3. And Mark Schluter will take the victory ahead of Ryan Grob as it stands at the moment. And, of course, I've got to say a very good drive here from Leroy Brown in fourth. Got to say, I didn't see much of him recently, especially not on this game, of course. But then again, we haven't seen many of all these Tier 2, Tier 3 drivers on this game just yet. But he's doing a very good job in that has to bring it home to a steady P4 finish. We've still got Leo Lund and Richard Sprogis fighting with Valentino Labella. This is for P5 as Labella gets the move done around the outside of Richard Sprogis to get himself up into P6 and now look to close in and make a move on Leo Lund. You can see that just the ERS, it's just so strong, isn't it? You can see he was what, 8/10 back, the braking's on its 2.
Yeah, we can pump the entire battery into the set of about half a lap if you wanted to. And it really goes to show just how much energy is on tap in these cars and how they just eke it out normally under normal conditions. But when you really need it, to be able to dump it in an entire sector, it really does make a massive difference. You say that 8/10 just eclipsed almost in an instant, but it does leave you very open, and that variability, it creates a lot more strategic options, but it also creates a lot more vulnerabilities if you misuse it. And I think that's what some drivers are having to grapple with now, especially when you look back to the start of the race. A lot of moves were happening not because we were seeing extremely smart plays per se, but we were seeing people just taking advantage of where their opponents had dumped everything into the start and then had no recourse for defense.
Of course, and a few game cycles back there was, you was able to use different ERS modes, but now it's it's been gone for a couple of years. It's came back for the drivers, like I said before earlier on, who haven't played who haven't played before 2021, sorry. They haven't been used to being able to use different modes. Those who played before the veterans of league racing, they know, they still have it in their head of how to use the different modes. As we can see there, a move being made by Leo Lund. Oh, no, he's stopped on circuit. He's backwards, heading down towards turn 1. Interesting, indeed, he's retired.
I think he's just waiting. Oh, never mind. He has retired out on the track, and that's going to make it 12 cars remaining in this session.
Yep.
I think we're going to see a lot of race engineers who have veteran experience or experience from prior games. I think we're going to see those race engineers and just race engineers in general really come into their own this cycle. They've got a lot more options. They've got a lot more at their disposal. Of course, the data that you can get from the game in terms of planning and strategy already was top notch. It was the gold standard. Mm-hmm. But with the combining of that, the new characteristics, and the additional ERS modes, engineers are going to have an absolute field day.
Yeah, they will. There's, like you said before, there's a lot more for them to do, and that makes the engineer's job better. And it also, I do think they get discredited a lot. I think engineers do play a lot more of a part than people actually realise, and now they have even more of a bigger part to play. I need to get that right in this game. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see. I think we might see some results sometimes be in favour of people who've got better engineers. Normally, you're like, right, you can drive, it's fine, you can get to the end. But now, with all these different things people have got to look at, if you're a driver, you can't look at everything, can you? So, you've got to you got to put so much more things into perspective, as we can see now. Joris Kroos, after a little waffle on, head towards the end. I've got to say, it's been a bit of an uneventful race, hasn't it? But we can see Joris Kroos now head
We
through.
have 12 drivers remaining. What do you mean uneventful?
As Joris Kroos wins in Spa ahead. Well, he doesn't now. He drops down to third as Mark Schlusser takes the victory ahead of Ryan Grob in second, and it will be third, of course, for Joris Kroos after a very eventful Grand Prix here in Belgium. And the two Hasses, fourth and fifth, we don't see that very often, ahead of Richard Sprogis, Andres Lopez, Tony Roche. Oh, we have a bit of damage there off of the cars after they finished the race.
Just put a friendly tap. Just put a love tap. No, I think we saw a lot of chopping and changing, a lot of drivers in real time grappling with the very different experience that is F124. Be that the new track, be that the car's new characteristics, or just getting a chance to get the feet wet, proverbially and literally, in this new cycle. We've seen a lot of up and downs. For some, it's a social race to forget, but for others, I'd say pretty good time all in all. So luckily, as we said, low stakes as we come up to the podium now, and we'll have the standings in due course. I just got a ping to say that my game has finished fixing.
At the end of the race, brilliant timing.
Perfect timing.
We could say,
welcome to F124, everyone.
Mark Schlusser wins ahead of Ryan Grob, ahead of Joris Kroos, and the two Hasses fourth and fifth. Then we have Richard Sprogis, Andres Lopez, Tony Roche, Zach Miles and JST went at the top 10. Then, of course, we have Liam Bowman in 11th and Daniel Gottschalk in P12. Then we have Leo Lund, Ray Simtias, Thomas Lamon and Joe Marquardt, Ricardo Enzoni, Nelson Average and Hade, Nick Bonventer not complete the race and finish as a DNF. Oh, so a very, well, I've got to say, an interesting race. We've learnt many things, but we've also learnt how the drivers like to battle on some occasions, as we saw in today's race. Yeah, I think it was... Well, F124 has not had the best start. This race definitely was not the best start to the game, but hopefully with more social races and of course more updates, it gets a little bit better, Sappy.
Yeah, well, I think as tongue-in-cheek as I have been with the whole re-download of the game, I'm very excited for this game cycle.
Of course.
I think if this early race is anything to go by, and with all the variables it poses, of course, social race, premature handling model, pre-patch, and everything else that comes with it, no wet TTs, and being a very new situation for drivers to handle, I'm very excited to see what this game cycle holds. It's a big change. It's something different. And I think that's what we want more than anything else. Yeah. And what we love here in the league racing scene is just to see that variability, because with every change in, well, I guess the league racing doesn't necessarily have a meta.
Yeah.
Every change in philosophy, let's say, from sort of more conservative driving styles to more aggressive and vice versa. What you see is we get a chance for some drivers who maybe didn't have the chance before to really sort of shine, to come out of the woodwork, to prove and show what they are made of. Because some driving styles and some sort of physics models, they don't work for everyone, but we also get an opportunity inversely for those who really gel well with this new approach to handling to really thrive. And that's the thing I'm excited for. I'm excited for the different names to either in terms of versatility and as a driver being able to adapt, because that's just as skillful, if not more, or for completely new names to take to the field and take the league racing scene by storm. It could all happen.
Of course. I think this race, it was not much to go by. Pace wasn't really there because it was just a long DRS train, then it was rain, and then qualifying also was just about who was on the best, who was in the best position at the right time. So yeah, pace wise, it's not really, you can't really tell much. But I've got to say, the pace looks a lot closer this game, even especially in the races. Everyone was running so much closer together. We had long DRS trains. The only people that weren't in the DRS trains were people that were caught up in incidents. So pace looks a lot more similar. But obviously, we need more social races. We need more drivers to come and test it out before we can really say what's the mojo with this new game. But an interesting start. I'm interested to see what happens next time. I don't know when we'll have our next social race. I think we'll have some in the future. When that is, I don't have a clue. But of course, guys, thanks for joining us. Of course, this was the first race for the PC side on the brand new F124 game. It's been a pleasure to, alongside Sabi, trying to commentate this race. And I'm sure you'll see more of us. If not, you'll see another pair of commentators in the next social race comments box, which I'd don't believe will be too far away. I don't know if there is one, but I couldn't see why they wouldn't be, because it's still been a bit of an eventful evening, and also it gets a chance for the commentators to learn the game and also to test their streaming equipment to make sure everything works spick and span. And I believe there was a few issues with audio, but I did adjust it as we went through. So of course any feedback will be appreciated. But Sappy, it's been a pleasure, and I think that is all for tonight. So guys, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next time for some more action here at WOR. Good night.